Welcome to the April edition of the Adaptive Cards community call. If you ever need to help other people get this calendar invite, this aka.ms link is your best resource. So it's just aka.ms/adaptive cards community call. And as I mentioned, we are meeting every month, second Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. So the next call will be on May 9th. That is a day after build. And not sure if the session list is out yet, so I may slightly get in trouble for saying this, but we do have, both David and I have an adaptive card session at Build. We don't know what day yet, but it's very likely that it'll be a day or so before this. So you can probably expect the May call to be a recap of Build. Maybe you'll get, Build is streamed, so let me actually quickly switch to Build. So hopefully I'll see some of you at Build. It's in just under a month. You know, me, David, Andrew's on this call. I'll have some kind of links to them. We're going to have a session at Build, and we will also have a booth that makes it very interactive and easy to engage with everyone on a one-on-one setup. So if you happen to be at Build, please do look us up. Either Matt, David, Andrew will all be kind of floating around the conference. Andrew Leader on this call is running the booth, so he'll definitely be there. You'll see him. We'll have adaptive card T-shirts. Please come and find us. That session, if you can't go, that session will be online, and you'll be able to watch everything in case you can't fly to currently rainy Seattle. We'll have that up, and then so expect the next community call to probably be the session, a recap of the session, so you guys won't be more than a day behind whatever people see at Build. So that's coming up. As a quick, so these calls are run by myself and David every month. You can find us on Twitter, and you can find us at our at Microsoft.com email addresses. We are 2019. I would say the theme from our team is customer engagement. I won't even kind of short step around it. I mean, we really want to talk to you, hear from you, make sure we're building a product that is meeting your needs. I do have a separate slide, so please do take down our email addresses, and please do find us on Twitter. I've had some really great Twitter engagements over the last couple months on people just using adaptive cards for things that I don't think any of us ever kind of predicted. So we're hoping to kind of loop in some more of those into these calls. And that said, so if you feel like you want to present at some of these calls, that would be more than great. It's hard for us to have useful product announcements every month. So looping in the community, helping other people see what you're doing or how Adaptive Cards is helping with your problem, I think kind of benefits the whole community. So please, either screenshot this or just find us at matt.heidinger@microsoft.com or dclo@microsoft.com, and we'll route you around. That said, today we do have a couple of special guest presenters. So Audrey Gordon will be joining us. She said she might be a few minutes late, so she may not be in the call yet. But she's going to give us a pretty cool demo of adaptive cards in Teams, and I believe using Flow. You can find her on Twitter at Artsy Power Rapper. And she did some really cool YouTube videos of adaptive cards in Teams maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And in fact, she reached out and said, hey, would I be able to share some of this stuff on your community call? And it's exactly what we want. So this is cool that we're having, some guest presenters. And Andrew Leader, while he's not necessarily a special guest, he is kind of part of the Adaptive Cards team. He hacked away at our designer, and he's probably WhatsApping me right now telling me whether it's going to work or not. And he's going to do a quick demo on something he kind of whipped up the last couple of days. So just some kind of neat stuff to share from some of our, some different people than necessarily me talking the whole time. So this is what I kind of mentioned. So we would just, I won't hammer it anymore, but like we'd love to hear from you one-on-one. So we want to know our adaptive cards solving your problems. We don't just want to talk about tech and for tech's sake. We want to know what problems we're helping you solve, or maybe not helping you solve, what's missing, what's difficult. So if you do email me, and a couple people I saw some people on the call that I've recently had a couple of these meetings with, please kind of reach out, and I'm happy to do 30-minute calls. We just share what's working, what's not working. We're just trying to kind of prioritize what we go after in 2019. So again, we're kind of open. Yes, Spinning Duck. Go ahead, do your thing. All right. Real quick recap. In February, we announced, this is kind of our biggest vNext or 2.0 preview. If you missed the February call, it's a super long link, obviously, these slides. If you just go to Google or Bing and just type Adaptive Cards Community Call, you'll find the February one. It's cool. We deep dive into just this templating and some vNext stuff. And then March, we actually take that, last month, we took that to the next level and showed maybe remote template loading and just kind of this future world we're getting at. So just as a quick recap, there's some good content if this is your first call and you may miss the last couple. All right. So I'm going to give a super quick update on 1.2. That's our current release. And then I'm just going to hand over the reins. So this will probably be just a few more minutes. And then Andrew and Audrey will be taking over to demo some kind of real usage of adaptive cards and how they were able to take the code and fork it in certain ways. So here's a quick update on the 1.2 release. So the 1.2 release is in active development. We are planning to ship end of April, so just the next couple weeks here. The issue list, so it's 2444. I plug this feature on GitHub all the time. I think it's really neat. I don't even know when they added it. But if you go to our GitHub or anyone's GitHub, frankly, and you go to issues, the project maintainers have the ability to pin issues at the top. And I just think this is just really neat, especially for things like announcements. So here's where you're very quickly able to see, well, what are you guys doing in 1.2 and quickly get to it. And then that 2.0 preview is just a really easy way to get to that issue or really the spec on, how we're adding data binding into the language and et cetera, et cetera. So these are two just easy, quick ways to get where you want to see. So the 1.2 feature list, we don't have probably the next call or the following after. It'll be a really good way to show how these features, I'd say it's definitely our biggest point release. 1.1, the main highlights where we added media so people could start putting audio and video in cards. And we added the ability to put icons and actions and just kind of starting to round out some of the things you can do for more actionable and slightly more visually appealing cards. We're adding in 1.2 some more stuff towards dynamism. I never know how to say that word correctly. But as a quick example, so another action type we're adding is toggle visibility. And so you can have an array of element IDs and basically add a level of just, declaratively toggling the visibility of things. We have some really neat scenarios that will show it's hard to appreciate these features just on their level, at just like the simple level. So what we'll do over the next month as 1.2 releases is show these in more scenarios. And David, if you had a couple you want to show now, we could do that, or we could wait till May.
Yeah, I was going to suggest I can do it quickly. So let me take over the screen. Let me close some stuff that should not be open first. So this is the designer. All right. So I don't know which feature Matt was just talking about. I don't remember which one you were just talking about right now. But so here is one of the things that we're adding. We call them, it's additional styles for containers. We used to have emphasis, which yielded a gray background. Now you have support for, more colors that match the font colors for that matter. And talking about background colors, there's also this super neat thing. If you've ever used adaptive cards, you might be wondering, how can I achieve that thing on the right? Well, it's just through that one property here called bleed. Now, if I remove that, you're going to see that that container actually shows the way it used to show, but now you can actually make it bleed into the padding of the card so that you can get those cool headers. A couple more examples of cool stuff. So Matt was talking about action toggle visibility. Hopefully this one is going to work. I'm showing you like dev stuff. So you can see here you can make something show and hide at the click of a button. And this is not the same as a show cards. You can see the area that's being shown or hidden is above the button and not below it. So this opens up plenty of possibilities. You can have that displayed as links, or you can even have that action as a result of clicking an image. So plenty of things can be done in that area. And maybe one more thing, the input validation stuff, is that or is it something that we are pushing to 1.3? I can't remember.
I think we can show it. It's probably gonna make it.
Okay, so
guys, this is what I love about these calls is we just have very frank conversations with everyone. There's certainly nothing hidden in adaptive cards, but yeah.
So we realize that we have inputs, we have actions, but so far there hasn't been a built-in way to validate the value of an input and to have visual cues as to what went wrong. So now through an additional validation property that you can specify on any type of input, you can say whether there's a necessity to validate, and here you can say required with visual cue, and this is a design in progress, but the visual cue is in that little red bar on the left for this particular example. We're also tweaking maybe with a star on the right. It's just work in progress. Or you can just say it's required, in which case the cue doesn't show. But in the end, if you try to take that action and you have not entered a name in there, you're going to see validation errors. And this is entirely handled by the renderer. So as the host application, you don't have to code anything. It's just done. And as I enter text now, the cue goes away, et cetera, and now the action can actually be taken. And should we do just one last for the road? I don't know which one. Which one do I have? Action, sentiments. Yes, let's do that one.
Oh yeah, these are good.
So action, sentiments. I have to switch back and forth from the designer and so on because not everything is supported everywhere just yet.
Yeah.
So now you have the ability to say that an action might have a positive sentiment, or the default sentiment, or a destructive sentiment. This makes it possible for the host to apply a custom style to the button that's associated with the action to say, hey, if you click this, it's probably gonna do something irreversible. So think about it, right? Like when you want to delete something. So this is the kind of stuff you will find in 1.2, and I'm gonna give it back to you, Matt.
Yeah, a cool thing I like about sentiment, I don't know that we necessarily hooked it up, but a reason we called it a sentiment instead of just, a style, is that you could certainly see a world where you apply maybe keyboard behaviors or gesture type behaviors, or even, in some cases, for example, I know Windows and Mac, they alternate which is the primary button versus which is hooked up to enter versus which is hooked up to escape. So you can start to see, you can imagine some behavioral stuff applied to this based on the platform it goes to. So right now it's just, visually different, but you could imagine, in the future we could, or a host could effectively, use that information to deliver the most appropriate experience to a particular client. Andrew, do you want to take over and we'll show the cool designer fork you made?
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. Go ahead and share when you're ready.
All right. So, I don't know. I think most of you might know that we have Android renderers available, but there's no real easy way to try out our Android renderers today. You would have to clone our repo and build the Android app and then deploy it to your phone, which is a lot of work. Nobody's really going to do that. We have our web designer and the TypeScript renderer easily accessible with the website there. So we wanted to make the Android renderer also easily accessible for people to try out. So what we've done is we've published the Android Adaptive Cards Visualizer to the App Store. And so it's available today if you search Adaptive Cards Visualizer. I'll put that in the chat stream. And you can go ahead and install that today on your Android phones.
Cool. So yeah, for you folks on Android, give this a shot. Let us know if it works. You'll see what you can do with it in a second.
Cool. So that's the link, but the app today, we've just published an update, and you might get the newer version when you install it. But if you don't see this connect via QR code button, you have the older version where you would have to type in a JSON payload by hand, and that's.
And so this is your Android phone, right? This is a mirror of your Android phone.
Yeah. So it'd be pretty awful to try to test out adaptive cards in here. Like,
yeah,
not very usable. So what if you could use the designer with that? So that's what this connect via QR code button is. So in a new version of the website designer, if you go to adaptivecardssharing.azurewebsites.net, Matt, can you paste that link in?
Yeah, sure. Yep.
And that link is accessible today by anyone, and you can click the share button. It'll generate a QR code. And so if we go back to the phone, I can just say connect via QR code, scan that, and then the card just comes down from the visualizer, and all the updates you make, whoops, keep that docked there. So all the updates you make in there are just live updated. You can see as I drag this around, it moves on the phone. And if I want to try out those new container styles, I can select this container and set that style to good. And I'll see that be changed. And I'll try out, I don't know if the action sentiment will work. Okay, it does something on Android. It doesn't look the best. We haven't finished 1.2 yet.
Right.
But yeah, really cool way to actually test out how your cards look with our Android renderer. And the update should hopefully be available later today. I submitted it just an hour ago. Google's pretty fast about updating their apps. So yeah, go ahead and try it out.
So obviously, long term, we'll roll that sharing button into adaptivecards.io. Yeah. And as Andrew practices his experience in persuasion, we'll also get our iOS dev to maybe do the same thing for iPhones.
Yeah. Yeah. So we also have an iOS app, and we have a Windows app too, but those aren't published to the store either. So we want to get those published and also connect this with the sharing service so that you can try our adaptive cards everywhere and make sure they work everywhere.
Nice. So something I just say to this. So Andrew is part of the team. He's more familiar with our code base. So he just forked the designer code, cloned our repo. Obviously, anyone could do anything you see here. But what's neat is we designed the designer to do this type of thing. So, we've seen products I've demoed previously like AtBot where they integrate the designer into their experience. The designer itself has a toolbar API. You can modify the toolbar. We want anyone to be able to enable, this is a scenario that we happen to use both tools, both the Android renderer and the designer to achieve a scenario. As you can see, this is probably super useful for us to test Android and test iOS. It just makes it really easy when we get a bug report on GitHub, just paste it into your designer on your PC. You don't have to deal with somehow getting that payload to your Android phone. It helps us make it, testing easier. But anyone could have done this just using the tooling that we provide. So I think that's just such a cool use case and just a real world use of our the extensibility we want to build in. Cool. So reach out to Andrew if you have questions on that. Audrey, how are you feeling about taking the reins here?
I am ready to share.
Oh, that is awesome. Okay, take it away at your leisure.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to try and share screen. Let's see how I do with that big task. So I'm going to just go to the right place and then go back to Teams and choose screen one. Sounds right. Basically, you should see my screen. I think I can just switch to my Teams, right? So if I want to go to Teams, but I don't want to show you guys, I want to show a Teams, you still see this, right?
Yeah, we're seeing that. Yep.
Good. Okay, so let me tell you what happened to me. So this is the story that's important. I fell across adaptive cards because of a blog that my manager did. So sometimes I get behind on what he's doing. And he said, we now have Flow bots for adapted cards. And I was like, what is that? So I went to the site. I didn't do a lot of reading. I'm going to tell you very honestly, just kind of like skimmed over this stuff, watched a video, thought it was interesting. But the thing that helped me was these samples, right? So you guys probably talked about them already, but I want to talk about them in the context of a normal user, right? So I'm not a dev. I don't create advanced solutions. I don't even know Java or JSON that well. Like I know it enough to get in trouble. So what would that kind of person be able to do with our new action, which is called, posting a adaptive card bot to Teams? Well, in my case, the first thing I came up with is reporting. So like I could schedule a monthly report that would show them some data from anywhere. Another thing is incident management. Like if somebody's out in the field taking photos and they take a photo of an incident and they press a button on their phone, that incident can be posted to the Teams immediately with a link to the Zendesk item or the Dynamics case item or the SharePoint list item. And my brain just went wild. So I want to tell you, kind of show you what I did and how easy it is for like the end user to get involved. So to get started, I created a flow. And basically what this flow is doing is just getting some data, because in order for me to show you how this works really well, we need a little bit of data to play with. So
and Audrey, could you give just like a 2-second intro into Flow? We haven't actually demoed it on this call before, so just so folks on the call have like just a quick idea of what Flow and when you use Flow.
Ooh, that's a great idea. So let's see if I can open. So Flow, which you can get to from flow.microsoft.com, and it'll have a little sign in. You can sign in with your Microsoft credentials. I mean, your company Office 365 credentials. And once you do this, you have this wealth of opportunities for creating automated and scheduled workflows. We also have process workflows called business process flows. These are all systems for automating what we do every day. Sometimes we waste a lot of time manually clicking on stuff, when if we have a logic, we can teach the computer what to do in a given scenario, and the computer can do it for us, right? So think of the cloud and all the advantages of being in the cloud. We have all this AI, we have machine learning, we have cognitive analysis, we have Office 365 productivity tools, we have Dynamics 365 productivity tools. We've got all this amazing stuff, but it's kind of a lot for us all to be doing every day, right? Okay, let me go over here, do that. Let me go over here, do that. In this sense, you can actually create automations to make your work easy. Now, if I go to like the productivity tab, so I am actually looking at the templates, because we actually give you a whole bunch of like 2-click flows and that you can just revise and easily use. Like productivity, one of my favorite, and it is a favorite because it's been used 123,000 times, where this particular flow, you create it and it will take any of your attachments from your email and automatically move them to the OneDrive folder, right? And I can look for different things, like I can do upload photos here. If I plan to upload photos from my phone, I can look for these little finger button icons, and I can create a scenario where I'm uploading a photo with a button click on my phone to a SharePoint folder. And these are so easy to use. You just click on them, and then it tells you, okay, here are the connectors. When I say connectors, I'm talking about what are we connecting to? What dependencies do we have from a data source or data destination perspective? And it makes you sign into those, which it should automatically do if you have an Office 365 Dynamics 365 license. But if you have like some connectors that might have timed out because you didn't change your password, or third-party connectors like Trello and Twitter, you might have to sign in on those, right? So then it'll prompt you to help you know when you need to sign in. And then you'll click, and basically it kind of creates the flow for you. You can rename it, right? So I can say, upload to SharePoint, call it whatever I want. And then basically it's all set up. All it wants to know is what SharePoint site and what folder. And so it's very easy to use Flow to automate things. And part of that automation to me is posting messages to teams. And so I like using Flow for doing that. Is that a good enough intro?
Yeah, I totally think so. So, I mean, my understanding is, so you either manually trigger a flow, as in you put a button somewhere on your experience and that kicks it off, or it's usually hooked up to some event that, like you said, an email came in and it had an attachment, so that's going to kick off a flow. Or someone said something and share, well, like a bot said something. So there's these events that happen that kicks off the orchestration. Yeah. And what I think you're going to show is sometimes the end of that orchestration could send a message to teams or an adaptive card to teams. Is that kind of the gist?
Yes. And I think the only flow type you missed, because you mentioned manual, you mentioned event-based, there's some event that occurred that triggers it, but there's also business process flows would help to design a business process and align steps within that business process. Really cool stuff. I would love to come back and talk to you about.
Cool. Okay.
So if you search for Teams up here at the top of the templates, you'll see all the different triggers we have for Teams right now. The new one is one I'm going to show you today. So we don't have a template for that new one yet. But like, for instance, I can automatically post a message to Teams for a selected file in SharePoint. I can automatically post a team for a selected item. Or if I want to report something from VSTS and notify the team. These templates all exist and you can use them for Teams. Cool. But we have a new one that I want to show you today, and that is the adaptive cards one, right? So lots of fun stuff there. And I can always come back and talk more about Flow plus Teams. It's really a fun partnership. It's a great partnership. So
I'll make sure I get links from you. When the video goes up, I'll get some good links for people to kind of follow through as they see this too. So we'll get those.
Yes, definitely. Because I didn't take into account some people may not know Flow yet. I'm too close to it. So in this particular flow, so this is a good example of a reoccurring flow. So it's not triggered by a button. It's not triggered by an event per se. It's triggered by some reoccurrence. So I'm scheduling it, right? And I've scheduled it to run every Friday. It was so easy to do. I just selected the frequency, month, day, week, whatever, and then what the interval was. I can add parameters about what time of day and so forth. So this is a really nice reoccurrence flow. Now, I'm actually going to let my team know about potential change orders. So we have a SharePoint site, and our SharePoint site is capturing change orders. So imagine a construction project, for instance, and there's things happening, and the contractors have to submit when they need more time or they need more money. So we call them cost and schedule impacts. So I'd like to give my team a weekly report of the count of cost versus the count of schedule impacts, right? Because they impact our bottom line and, our how we get through this program. So going back to my flow, you can see that I've used the get items action to actually retrieve the items in the potential change order list. And I can always add OData filters. Like I can say days equal EQ. This is an OData format. And if you, I will give you links on all the OData options you have, but I'm going to do days equals or less than 1. Because I know that any change order that is less than 1 day is going to be a cost impact. There is a column called impact cost, and I always share this with people because that's a choice list. It's a little bit more complicated to create that OData filter, but I can give you instructions on how to do that. I didn't want to take time talking about that during this demo, so I found another route. So you can take any route you want to get to your filtered whatever filter you need. And so then after I get those, I want to do a couple of things. I want to count them, right? So in the beginning of my flow, I added a count to count the cost and a count here to count schedule. I think I ended up only using cost because if the days are less than 1, what I did was I iterate through them wherever the cost estimate is greater than 0, and I increment the count for cost. If it's I did use schedule. If it's not cost, then it's schedule, so I incremented that count, okay? So this is basically the flow stuff, which is very exciting, but not as exciting as the adaptive cards. So let me close this up. And now what I'm going to do is use this data that I've configured here in this flow to push into an adaptive card. So the first thing I need to know is what is this action? So if you just do new step and you type Microsoft Teams, you can even get away with typing Teams. The first one will be Microsoft Teams. And here you can see all of our triggers. So remember you were talking about what events can trigger a flow. These are the two events we have: when a channel message is added or when I'm mentioned. And then we have these actions. And you probably some of you may know about the older ones, but here's the exciting one I want to talk about today, which is post your adaptive card as the flow bot to a channel. And so at that point, it wants to know a few things. It wants to know what team are you talking about? We're going to use the planning team site. And what channel are we talking about? We're going to use the weekly reports, because remember, I'm going to post a weekly report. All right. Cool. Now, the message is the actual card. And you would think that when you get into looking at some of these cards, that you would think, you're looking on the right side of this screen here, you would think that these cards require you to know how to write this JSON, but they don't really, right? So I was able to power user my way through this. So I picked
power user. I like that.
Yeah, I power user my way through it. I didn't care about this JSON in the middle for now. I'm ignoring it completely. This is what interests me over here. So I'm going to click try it yourself. And you can include the designer in Visual Studio Code as well. I just decided to keep this extremely simple. All right. So now I have my card here, and I'm going to design it visually, right? So I don't want the title of this to be Publish Adaptive Card. I want it to be Weekly Impact Type Count. So really easy. This guy here, I don't really need, because there's no picture involved here. So anything I don't need, I can just remove, right? I can remove the column as well. And then I want to replace anything that I want to replace with dynamic data. What I do, and this is just me, is I put in all caps. So full name requester, something like this, right? And actually, I try to avoid symbols and stuff like that that could, make problems. But if you notice down here, for those of you that love code, you'll see that this is actually being, just maybe if I click away here, this is actually being put into this JSON live. You can see here on line 19, it typed exactly what I typed up here. So that's what I mean. It's writing code for me, and I love when people write code for me. And then this one, I want this to be the submit date. So I'll put that in all caps, right? And I can use spaces. That's a SharePoint thing where I tend to drive against spaces. Okay. And then here, I might use this for the, well, actually, you know what? I'm sorry. We actually going to use this for a different one. I think I just went down the wrong one. We'll come back to this one. I'm going to go back to the samples because I want the easier one. Not that that one's hard, but I want one that aligns with the count. And they have this sporting event one, this one right here that I like, right? So I'm going to try this one because actually I want the count of, I forgot what I was doing. I want the count of the, so the count of cost, and let's put that in count of cost against the count of schedule. All right, and I'll show you where I use the other one. Sorry, I've been using these so often I forget which one I'm doing. Now they're going to be numbers, so I'm not going to worry about this. If you want to like make sure it fits, just remember that I'm just going to have a number there. But these are placeholders to help me put the numbers into the JSON when I get back into Flow. And here I can pick a link to any image that I might have. I believe I do have some icons online, but I'll show you how easy it is to just do an image. So I'm going to do bing.com, and I'm just going to search for an icon called cost. And I'm going to click on images. This is that power user thing again. find something that I like, click on it as many times as it takes me to get to the PNG link, right? And now I'm going to use that link here. And then for, and I can just change this to say cost. And then for schedule, let's find something good enough for schedule. So we'll go back to our search and we'll type icon schedule. And here we have a schedule icon that looks pretty decent. Nope, but I can't use it because it doesn't end in ping. This is the tip here. If it doesn't like have a link for you to get to, then you can't use it. Let's see what we can find here that has, this one looks, yes. So here we have one. We will go back to our adaptive card and we'll paste that link here for this image. And then we'll put schedule here. So basically our adaptive card is finished. What I'm gonna do is add one more thing to it if I can. Help me if I get lost here. I'm going to add a, let's see, in my container, I want to add a column. Well, not a column, a row. Can I add a row? Yes. Where did I add a row at? Or I could put it in here, I guess. Okay.
If you're just adding a new element like a text box, you can just drag it in from the toolbox.
I can? Okay. Text box.
Yeah, so just maybe try and drag that where you want it to be.
Yeah, I think I'll just rename this.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll just put here, this is the SharePoint site.
Oh, okay.
And this is today's date. So I will just put today. Okay, now basically it's done. One more thing I might have done if I wanted to, Matt, is I used to see, and I might be missing it because I'm in, oh, here it is. I'm going to add an action, and I'm going to add open URL. And what I'm going to use this for is to open the SharePoint list. So I'm just going to put the word view in here. And the URL here is going to be my SharePoint list, right? And this could be any link you want. What I've also used this for is a link to a planner task, for instance, right? So now this is completely ready. Now I do need to hit copy JSON here, but did I really do a lot of JSON? No, I did not. You know, I clicked around, I choose some things, I picked some icons. I can always change the sizes on these as well, you know, to make them look more consistent or whatever. Play around with this. Let's see what I can do to make this maybe a little bigger. They're not equal in size. And I probably would have spent some time looking for those, which I have in the past. But for now, we'll just put them both small and see what it looks like. Yes, I think that's fine. You get the point, right? Yeah. I'm going to copy JSON. If I wasn't on a demo, I could take my time and even make my own icons, right? But I'm going to go back to Flow now. And that JSON that I just clicked copy JSON, I'm going to paste here. Now, everywhere where I put those capital words, I'm going to add dynamic fields, right? So let's just check. So this is just the title of the item SharePoint site. Well, here are my counts I want to add. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to go into my variables because I have two. I have one for count cost and one for count schedule. Sorry, I clicked too far. So let's go back to that cost. And this is kind of the hardest part I found. Because the code is so long, you have to be careful that you are in the right place in your JSON when you click on your variable so that it ends up in the right place. And if it does that too many times and starts to annoy you, you can totally copy this and paste it up there. I noticed it's inconsistent about when it will like just pop it in there and when it won't. And we can work on that on the Flow team to see what we can do to help. And I'm going to add cost schedule. And look, that time it worked. So it's a little finicky there, but you can copy and paste from wherever it lands. So now I have my two counts. I don't really need to do anything else except change the date. And I could use UTC now, but I'm going to use a date format that I like, which we will also give to you in a description. So I'm going to go into my expressions and paste this date format that I love to keep handy. It's just my converting UTC now to where I am in the world. And so that's all that is. And I think that's all we need to do because we already pasted the SharePoint site in there. And so now I'm going to hit save. Now, because this is reoccurring, we're not going to wait a week together. I'm going to just run a quick test. And so you can always test your flows. When you're using button flows or schedule flows, you can just say, I'll perform that trigger action and save and test. And then it will ask you any questions that might be in your prompt. If not, it will just start to run the flow. All right. And so you can actually watch it run if you want to. It's actually going to go through and do all of what it said it was going to do, get the items, iterate through them, and then post the bot. So if we go back to Teams now, and we go to our weekly reports, you can see that. There it is. And it counted how many there were. And so this is one of those things that is really easy to do. It takes no time. Let me see if I can show you another one that I did. So this is the one where I used that particular card that I was showing you earlier. And the reason I use that card is because we did have a picture to show. And so since we had a picture to show, I went ahead to use that card. And this one is actually coming from a library. So every time somebody posts to this library, there's a card that's posted here because these are contractor photos that are actually reporting something that's happening in the construction site elsewhere in the world. It's adding that to the SharePoint library, and then I'm using the adaptive card to literally post it here. And I actually, in this case, I put under the view the link to the actual photo that exists. Well, this photo might have been deleted, that exists in the SharePoint site so that you could view it. You know, it totally depends if I delete them, right? You should. Oh, I know what's happening. I'm getting into a different environment. So, but just the way, you know, anytime you're adding a link, like with that weekly report, we added a link to SharePoint. As long as you stay in the same tenant. Let's see. Right. If I can. Yeah.
The difficulty of demoing.
Yes, it is. It's kind of moving around.
Tenants and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. And so I really love how this works. And I feel like there's a whole lot of different opportunities that you have in using these for different things. You can see the change order alert where I took a little bit more time on them.
Oh, yeah.
Where I actually made my own icons coming from something that we have internally. And then I actually spent a little bit more time on what I would make this look like. Now, I do want to point out a couple of things in the way this looks. You do have on the bottom, it lets you know who's the one who like generated this report from Flow. So if you have questions, you could add that person to ask questions. Every Flow impact in Teams is going to notify you of who did it. And that way you can contact them to know if you have questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. At the risk of breaking both of us into jail, I don't know if that's a Microsoft phrase or otherwise, but someone messaged me and asked about, I think, something you had realized in your YouTube videos. So when we have actions that we want to paste back and then trigger a flow, like for example, yes. I think in one of your cards you have like a set due date. I don't believe that's working yet. Do you have anything you can share with folks on when you can click on a button from the card and have that kick off a flow?
Yes, this is a very good point. In Teams right now, if you use a card that has buttons, and by the way, you don't have to show the buttons. You can remove them when you're designing your thing, when your card. But where we're heading with this is you'll be able to use these buttons, and when you use them, that will push data into the output of that action, so that in your flow you can decide what to do with that output, right? And that's just not it's something that we have planned.
Okay.
I would estimate, within the next 3 months this would come out, hopefully sooner.
Yeah, that'll really complete the circle. I think that's a really neat thing. I've recently hooked up GitHub to my team, to our dev team, and it's pretty neat what it can do. Like I can assign labels to things all from within Teams. I can assign people to it's neat, and obviously they had to write code to do that because they're not using Flow. But once you can kind of complete that loop all from within Flow, I think that'll enable a really cool end-to-end scenario.
Yeah, and we've committed to that, so no worries, you will have it. And just one last point, once we get that, this is going to help in another way. So remember I talk about power users, right? Power users may not always know Power Apps, because you can embed a Power App in your Teams, right? You can also create a Microsoft form in Teams and show that. But here's a third way to create a form, right? And what I love about the difference between this form and Power Apps and Forms is that this one is always going to look like your Teams. That's why it's called adaptive. So like I'm one of those Teams people who, as you can see, likes the dark background. This will look dark for me, but the person that's using it who likes the light background, it will look light for them. So it has this integration that I love that makes it seem seamlessly part of Teams, right? And no effort on your part. And it's like, to me, the effort that it takes to add these fields, click, 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 is nothing. You can learn it in a day. And you can be very fast at making these forms that adapt to your team's environments. And that's the beauty of adaptive cards. No work on your part, it adapts to where you put it. And so that's why I'm very excited, and I plan to do a lot with this. So you and I are going to be friends, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of opportunity to streamline a lot of this, even going from the designer and how to replace fields. I know David's and I have been in some meetings with Flow. I'm excited about where we'll be able to take this over the next, few months to really just make it feel a lot more cohesive.
Yes. And one more thing I want to show you before I let you go is troubleshooting. Whenever you have a problem with your cards and you need to troubleshoot, you can use your run state of your Flow to kind of look at what is going through. Now, what I notice sometimes that happens, especially when you're adding URLs, is you need to make sure that the URL works. And sometimes it might be encoded or something. So you can look at your URLs up close in here to make sure that they're doing the right thing that you want them to do. And that's probably the level of troubleshooting I do with adaptive cards. It's just checking URLs, checking that I got the right date format. So for instance, if I go up to, I think today, I can look at that expression in date format, so that I can see that it actually went through well. So a little tip that might help you if you ever have any problems working with the adaptive cards in Flow. We plan to do some more there to help it be even more fun.
Cool. All right. Well, this was awesome. Anything else you want to show real quick? I'll do like a super quick. I have one other thing on Teams I was going to share just to get people to see kind of end to end. Anything else you wanted to show?
No, I want to come back one day and show you. Like, because I have plans to do a full solution with adaptive cards at the Microsoft Business Applications Summit in June.
Okay.
But I'd love to redo that with you guys too. Got
it. Okay, perfect. Well, so I'll kind of wrap up real quick just to give people an idea. So this is what I was mentioning, how we're using adaptive cards in Teams. So GitHub has written a Teams bot. This was written by GitHub. And every time an issue is assigned, we have some DevOps hooks. But GitHub did a really good job on this. So this is an adaptive card helping us know anything that's changed. This is literally from since this call is joined. And what I love about it is I can click on label. That does a show card. Oh, well, this one is currently labeled. Oh, sorry, no, never mind. So it opens up the show card, and they populate a choice set with all of the labels that we have. So literally from within Teams, I can either comment on this or give it a label within GitHub. It's just a really neat way of us to just bring content into Teams where we're at. And the other thing I'll say really quickly is you don't have to limit your adaptive cards to the conversation thread. And as a quick example, we have a demo that we'll hopefully release, but we have the app, a Teams app called Cap Polling. And watch what happens when I at cat polling. So I hit space and I can say create a poll, and if it works, what it's supposed to do is pop up a little modal dialog. Let me at cat polling. I need to install a new version of this. I guess I could say, what can you do? And I can say, so you can say, what can you do? And then this particular bot or app can only do one thing, which is create a poll. And then it opens up this little modal dialog. So this is actually an adaptive card too, which has a set of inputs. And it lets me basically make a poll like, what do we want for lunch, blah, 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 blah. And once I submit it, I could say allow multiple. But once I submit it, then it says, here's a preview of the card you're going to send. And then I can actually send this card into the chat. And so this is pretty neat. Like this lets me do, you don't have to do, just
that's
a really
amazing
another.
Because now, when I have a meeting, if I want to do a couple of polls, I can not only do the poll, but I have a record of what I did, right there. Wow.
And what's neat about this flow is that can be multi-turn. So you saw that the first card is filling in the poll. And then the second step is, here's a preview of what you're going to send. I could have done a third step. You can do these kind of multi-turn wizards where you're configuring what you want to send. And then ultimately, once you're done, you send it to the chat. And this is a channel. So this is a channel we have. So this is a group channel that people can vote on. So it's another neat use case. And those are called task modules within Teams. But they're another way where we're powered by adaptive cards, just in case people weren't aware of that. And we can do further deep dives on that. So with that, I think that's going to wrap up our community call. Thank you so much, Audrey and Andrew, for being our special guest stars. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call. And we will see you all after Build. And find us if you're at Build. Audrey, are you going to be at Build at all? Or
I hope so. We're going to see,
Cool.
Okay. But it's really great. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to coming back again.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.